Yo, what's going on, guys? It's me, Jedi. Today, we're going to be looking at the most infamous prison ever, Alcatraz. So, let's go. Number one. So, there are actually like a lot of deadly people in there. A lot of mafia, like gang members, mafia members, a lot of like mafia bosses. Pretty much people who are not like good people in society and like them to like the next level were pretty much people that were in Alcatraz. But one famous person was actually Al Capone, and he was one of the most famous mafia boss gangsters, and he killed so many people, he did so many things, and he was put into many different like prisons, but he usually bribed himself out of it, or he would just like get bail and leave. But Alcatraz was a place where you could say really changed him, because he actually played an instrument there. And you know, going from like a huge guy who basically kills people for a living, he started playing an instrument, and he started becoming a person who's like more different, and he really changed. And all this happened because of Alcatraz. And he actually used to play for other prisoners there, because people like legends have it that there were other people there who were actually like scaring him, and he actually played instruments there just to kind of help soothe himself. And he really mentioned, he said it a lot too, so he mentioned in some of the things that he wrote that Alcatraz completely changed him, and that he didn't have any sense of power in one place, and that was Alcatraz. Alright, number two is all but three. So, all but three. Pretty much, there was about 36 inmates that tried to escape, and most of them either got shot down, like right when they tried to like run for it. Like most of the escapes that happen there are guys who are just like, who when you're out in like the recreational yard, they kind of just run and try to jump the fence and take a swim in the water to try to make it. But the water's super cold, and there's guard towers, so they just snipe you down, and like the minute you leave the island, you're taken down. So pretty much all the people who try to escape, their lives end this way, or they get caught, or like when they're trying to like do a huge plan, their plan gets busted, or the other prisoners, you know, like they kind of know something's up and they kind of mess it up. But there were three guys who actually worked this out perfectly, and they were John and Clarence Anglin and Frank Morris. And there's also a different guy named Alan West, and these guys all helped, and they were the only three people who people speculate might have successfully escaped Alcatraz. And we're going to be talking more about them in a future video, but those are the only three people who may have escaped Alcatraz. So Alcatraz is actually named not for prisoners, or you know, the Alcatraz, the name sounds really like tough and rough, but in reality, it was actually named by a Spanish lieutenant who came to Alcatraz, and he saw that it was an island, and he named Alcatraz La Isla de las Alcatraces, which means the island of the Alcatrazes, and the Alcatrazes means pelicans. So then the direct translation would be the island of pelicans. So he just named it the island of pelicans. And if you go to San Francisco, you can actually see that there's actually a bunch of pelicans. There's a bunch of birds all over the place. And of course, that island was basically just like a place for the pelicans to go and relax. And when people started colonizing Alcatraz, they basically shut it down, and they restarted, and they made it into a prison. Number four, we have Mr. Birdman of Alcatraz himself. So the Birdman of Alcatraz was also a really like huge gangster, and I'm not gonna go too detailed with who he was, but he was just a really bad man. But the thing is, he never actually had birds, even though he's actually one of the most famous people that actually stayed in Alcatraz. There were actually a lot of movies made about him, and there's many like different TV shows and novels and everything that's written about the Birdman of Alcatraz, but he never had any birds in his actual cell or anywhere where he was. So I thought that was just kind of like a cool fact to throw in there in the middle. The prison was kind of dormant for 6 years when nothing really happened, and this was like in 1969. And when this happened, there's actually a lot of Native Americans that actually took over the place, and they actually claimed it as themselves because of the whole like treaty that was passed a while ago. And it's still a problem that we have today, where Native Americans say that most of the land is theirs, and they're still fighting for their rights, and the government's trying to sort all that out. But they actually stayed there for 6 years when Alcatraz was dormant, because it was like a perfect place, because you had a lot of water around it and you had a lot of birds. So they stayed there because they didn't have any other land, and they claimed it as themselves, and some of them still claim that Alcatraz belongs to them. So in the very beginning, I'm not going to go too in depth with who fought who, but there was a huge war that occurred, and one side basically like took out the other side, and Alcatraz was first just like a place where they would just put the prisoners there, and they would just like have like small Number 6 is, I'm not going to go too in detail with the whole war itself, but there were two people fighting each other in a war, and Alcatraz was just basically just like a military prison where all the military prisoners would just be put there, and they would just have to stay there, and they can't really leave because of the whole like 1.5 miles around it. And eventually the person who was leading that whole island decided to use those prisoners to build a prison there, and they basically built their own prisons. So the very first prisoners that ever lived in Alcatraz were military war prisons. In 1854, on Rocky Island, there was the very first lighthouse in Alcatraz, and this was the very first lighthouse in the Pacific coast. Later in 1909, a different lighthouse replaced that, but the very first one was actually in Alcatraz, and that was the biggest one, and they had that there for a long time. And you guys can go look it up if it's still there, but that lighthouse really covered the entire island, and most people who try to escape, it was like pretty much impossible, and you could overlook all of the bay using just that one lighthouse. Number 9 is one of the reasons why a lot of people believe that the 3 people actually escaped. It's actually possible to swim to shore. So a lot of people actually do like a huge mile in those waters, and one of the experts who actually does that mile a lot says that only like 20% of people never actually like complete it fully, but he says that most of the people who try and are in like decent health conditions, they make it. But this happens in the morning, and when the prisoners escaped, it was supposed to be at night. But considering the fact that they are hardened criminals who did have a lot of time to prepare, and the fact that they were all like, they weren't like Bay Area residents who kind of have like a 9-to-5 job and just take that swim for fun. They were actually hardened criminals who had the adrenaline and had the need to survive. So these are the reasons why people think that they would have actually made it, those 3 criminals. But we're going to definitely talk about that more in a future video, so stay subscribed and watch out for that video. Some prisoners actually like requested to go to Alcatraz, and this was kind of odd considering the fact that Alcatraz was considered one of the top prisons. But these prisoners actually wanted to go there because they wanted to show that they were like #1 prisoners. So some of these prisoners really wanted to go to Alcatraz. Not all of them like there were actually people who did not want to be there. So going to Alcatraz was supposed to be like a huge thing in the whole like prison area. So if you were like if you were a person back in the 1900s doing something wrong, you would want to go to Alcatraz if you're in any prison, because that just shows that you are that kind of criminal. So even prisoners have that whole like ladder that they have to climb, whereas at like a job you start off as like a normal person, you go manager, developer, and stuff like that. So same thing in with prisoners, they want to climb the ladder of being in the toughest prison. So they definitely want to go to Alcatraz, and they also want to try to escape, and that's what most people believe those 3 people did. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. Make sure you guys
like the video, share the video, and subscribe.
Yeah, do that. And Instagram, guys, right there at Jedi.Sullivan. Follow me like right now. I'll give you guys 3 seconds, okay? Go. Alright, yeah, you did it right. You promise? Okay, good. So, follow me on that. Subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.